The Northern Crusades or Baltic Crusades were crusades undertaken by the Christian kings of Denmark, Poland and Sweden, the German, Livonian and Teutonic military orders, and their allies against the pagan peoples of Northern Europe around the southern and eastern shores of the Baltic Sea. Swedish and German Catholic campaigns against Russian Eastern Orthodox Christians are also sometimes considered part of the Northern Crusades. Some of these wars were called Crusades during the Middle Ages, but others, including most of the Swedish ones, were first dubbed Crusades by 19th-century Romantic nationalist historians. The East Baltic world was transformed by military conquest. First the Livs, Latgalians and Estonians, then the Semi-Galians, Curonians, Prussians and the Finns underwent defeat, baptism, military occupation and sometimes extermination by groups of Danes, Germans and Swedes. Background. The official starting point for the Northern Crusades was Pope Celestine III's call in 1193, but the Christian kingdoms of Scandinavia, Poland and the Holy Roman Empire had begun moving to subjugate their pagan neighbors even earlier. The non-Christian people who were objects of the campaigns at various dates included the Pelagian Wends, Sorbs, and Obotrites between the Elbe and Oder rivers, the peoples of Finland in 1154, 1249, and 1293, Livonians, Latgalians, Salonians, and Estonians, Semi-Galians and Curonians, Old Prussians, Lithuanians and Samogitians. Armed conflict between the Baltic Finns, Balts and Slavs who dwelt by the Baltic shores and their Saxon and Danish neighbors to the north and south had been common for several centuries. Before the Crusade, the previous battles had largely been caused by attempts to destroy castles and sea trade routes and gain economic advantage in the region, and the Crusade basically continued this pattern of conflict, albeit now inspired and prescribed by the Pope and undertaken by papal knights and armed monks. Wendish Crusade. The campaign started with the 1147 Wendish Crusade against the Pelagian Slavs of what is now northern and eastern Germany. The crusade occurred parallel to the Second Crusade to the Holy Land, and continued irregularly until the 16th century. Livonian Crusade. By the 12th century, the peoples inhabiting the lands now known as Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania formed a pagan wedge between increasingly powerful rival Christian states, the Orthodox Church to their east and the Catholic Church to their west. The difference in creeds was one of the reasons they had not yet been effectively converted. During a period of more than 150 years leading up to the arrival of German crusaders in the region, Estonia was attacked 13 times by Russian principalities, and by Denmark and Sweden as well. Estonians for their part made raids upon Denmark and Sweden. There were peaceful attempts by some Catholics to convert the Estonians, starting with missions dispatched by Adalbert, Archbishop of Bremen in 1045 to 1072. However, these peaceful efforts seem to have had only limited success. Campaign against the Livonians. Moving in the wake of German merchants who were now following the old trading routes of the Vikings, a monk named Meinhard landed at the mouth of the Daugava River in present-day Latvia in 1180 and was made bishop in 1186. Pope Celestine III proclaimed a crusade against the Baltic heathens in 1195, which was reiterated by Pope Innocent III, and a crusading expedition led by Meinhard's successor, Bishop Berthold of Hanover, landed in Livonia in 1198. Although the Crusaders won their first battle, Bishop Berthold was mortally wounded and the Crusaders were repulsed. In 1199, Albert of Buxtehude was appointed by the Archbishop Hartwig II of Bremen to Christianize the Baltic countries. By the time Albert died 30 years later, the conquest and formal Christianization of present-day Estonia and northern Latvia was complete. Albert began his task by touring the empire, preaching a crusade against the Baltic countries, and was assisted in this by a papal bull, which declared that fighting against the Baltic heathens was of the same rank as participating in a crusade to the Holy Land. Though he landed in the mouth of the Daugava in 1200 with only 23 ships and 500 soldiers, the bishop's efforts ensured that a constant flow of recruits followed. The first crusaders usually arrived to fight during the spring and returned to their homes in the autumn. To ensure a permanent military presence, the Livonian Brothers of the Sword were founded in 1202. The founding by Bishop Albert of the Market at Riga in 1201 attracted citizens from the empire and economic prosperity ensued. At Albert's request, Pope Innocent III dedicated the Baltic countries to the Virgin Mary to popularize recruitment to his army, and the name of Mary's Land has survived up to modern times. This is noticeable in one of the names given to Livonia at the time, Terra Mariana. In 1206, the Crusaders subdued the Livonian stronghold in Terraida on the right bank of Goja River, the ancient trading route to the northwestern Rus. In order to gain control over the left bank of Goja, the stone castle was built in Sigulda before 1210. By 1211, the Livonian province of Metsepole and mixed Livonian-Latgalian inhabited county of Idomi was converted to the Roman Catholic faith. The last battle against the Livonians was the siege of Satisla hill fort near to Sigulda in 1212. The Livonians, who had been paying tribute to the East Slavic Principality of Polotsk, had at first considered the Germans as useful allies. The first prominent Livonian to be christened was their leader Kaupo of Terraida. As the German grip tightened, the Livonians rebelled against the Crusaders and the christened chief, but were put down. Kaupo of Terraida remained an ally of the Crusaders until his death in the Battle of St. Matthew's Day in 1217. The German Crusaders enlisted newly baptized Livonian warriors to participate in their campaigns against Latgalians and Salonians, Estonians, and against Semigalians, Samogitians and Curonians. Campaign against the Latgalians and Salonians. After the subjugation of the Livonians, the Crusaders turned their attention to the Latgalian principalities to the east, along the Goja and Daugava rivers. The military alliance in 1208 and later conversion from Greek Orthodoxy to Roman Catholicism of the Principality of Talava was the only peaceful subjugation of the Baltic tribes during the Nordic Crusades. The ruler of Talava, Talavaldus, became the most loyal ally of German crusaders against the Estonians, and he died a Catholic martyr in 1215. The war against the Latgalian and Salonian countries along the Daugava waterway started in 1208 by occupation of the Orthodox Principality of Konis and the Salonian hill fort of Selpals. The campaign continued in 1209 with an attack on the Orthodox Principality of Jerseca, accused by Crusaders of being in alliance with Lithuanian pagans. After defeat, the king of Jerseca, Visvaldus, became the vassal of the Bishop of Livonia and received part of his country as a fiefdom. The Salonian stronghold of Selpals was briefly the seat of a Salonian diocese, and then came under the rule of the Livonian order. Only in 1224, with the division of Talava and Adzla counties between the Bishop of Riga and the Order of the Swordbearers, did Latgalian countries finally become the possession of German conquerors. The territory of the former Principality of Jerseca was divided by the Bishop of Riga and the Livonian Order in 1239. Campaign against the Estonians. By 1208, the Germans were strong enough to begin operations against the Estonians, who were at that time divided into 8 major and several smaller counties led by elders with limited cooperation between them. In 1208–27, war parties of the different sides rampaged through the Livonian, Northern Latgalian, and Estonian counties, with Livonians and Latgalians normally as allies of the Crusaders, and the principalities of Polotsk and Pskov appearing as allies of different sides at different times. Hill forts, which were the key centers of Estonian counties, were besieged and captured a number of times. A truce between the war-weary sides was established for 3 years and proved generally more favorable to the Germans, who consolidated their political position, while the Estonians were unable to develop their system of loose alliances into a centralized state. The Livonian leader Kaupo was killed in battle near Viljandi on 21 September 1217, but the battle was a crushing defeat for the Estonians, whose leader Lembitu was also killed. Since 1211, his name had come to the attention of the German chroniclers as a notable Estonian elder, and he had become the central figure of the Estonian resistance. The Christian kingdoms of Denmark and Sweden were also greedy for conquest on the eastern shores of the Baltic, while the Swedes made only one failed foray into western Estonia in 1220. The Danish fleet headed by King Valdemar II of Denmark had landed at the Estonian town of Lindenisse in 1219. After the Battle of Lindenisse, the Danes established a fortress, which was besieged by Estonians in 1220 and 1223, but held out. Eventually, the whole of northern Estonia came under Danish control. Wars against Saaremaa. The last Estonian county to hold out against the invaders was the island county of Saaremaa, whose war fleets had raided Denmark and Sweden during the years of fighting against the German Crusaders. In 1206, a Danish army led by King Valdemar II and Andreas, the Bishop of Lund, landed on Saaremaa and attempted to establish a stronghold without success. In 1216, the Livonian Brothers of the Sword and the Bishop Theodoric joined forces and invaded Saaremaa over the frozen sea. In return, the Isalians raided the territories in Latvia that were under German rule the following spring. In 1220, the Swedish army led by King John I of Sweden and the Bishop Karl of Linköping conquered Lihula and Rotalia in western Estonia. Isalians attacked the Swedish stronghold the same year, conquered it and killed the entire Swedish garrison including the Bishop of Linköping. In 1222, the Danish king Valdemar II attempted the second conquest of Saaremaa, this time establishing a stone fortress housing a strong garrison. The Danish stronghold was besieged and surrendered within 5 days. The Danish garrison returned to Revel, leaving Bishop Albert of Riga's brother Theodoric, and few others, behind as hostages for peace. The castle was razed to the ground by the Isalians. A 20,000-strong army under papal legate William of Modena crossed the frozen sea while the Saaremaa fleet was icebound. In January 1227, after the surrender of 2 major Isalian strongholds, Muhu and Valhalla, the Isalians formally accepted Christianity. In 1236, after the defeat of the Livonian Brothers of the Sword in the Battle of Saul, military action on Saaremaa broke out again. In 1261, warfare continued as the Isalians had once more renounced Christianity and killed all the Germans on the island. A peace treaty was signed after the united forces of the Livonian Order, the Bishopric of Osnabrück, and Danish Estonia, including mainland Estonians and Latvians, defeated the Isalians by conquering their stronghold at Kama. Soon thereafter, the Livonian Order established a stone fort at Puida. Wars against the Curonians and Semigalians. Although the Curonians had attacked Riga in 1201 and 1210, Albert of Buxhoveden, considering Courland a tributary of Valdemar II of Denmark, had been reluctant to conduct a large-scale campaign against him. After Albert's death in 1229, the Crusaders secured the peaceful submission of Anamona by treaty in 1230. In the same year, the papal vice-legate Baldwin of Alnea annulled this agreement and concluded an agreement with the ruler of Bandava in the central Courland Lamicans, delivering his kingdom into the hands of the papacy. Baldwin became the Pope's delegate in Courland and Bishop of Semigalia. However, the Germans complained about him to the Roman Curia, and in 1234 Pope Gregory IX removed Baldwin as his delegate. After their decisive defeat in the Battle of Saul by the Samogitians and Semigalians, The remnants of the Sword Brothers were reorganized in 1237 as a subdivision of the Teutonic Order, and became known as the Livonian Order. In 1242, under the leadership of the Master of the Livonian Order Andrew of Groningen, the Crusaders began the military conquest of Poland. They defeated the Curonians as far south as Impute, near the contemporary border with Lithuania, and founded their main fortress at Kuldega. In 1245 Pope Innocent IV allotted 2/3 of conquered Courland to the Livonian Order, and 1/3 to the Bishopric of Courland. At the Battle of Durbin 1260 a force of Samogitians and Curonians overpowered the united forces of the Livonian and Teutonic orders. Over the following years, however, the Crusaders gradually subjugated the Curonians, and in 1267 concluded the peace treaty stipulating the obligations and the rights of their defeated rivals. The unconquered southern parts of their territories were united under the rule of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The conquest of Semigalian counties started in 1219 when Crusaders from Riga occupied Mezotna, the major port on the Lilupe waterway, and founded the Bishopric of Semigalia. After several unsuccessful campaigns against the pagan Semigalian Duke Viestads and his Samogitian kinsfolk, the Roman Curia decided in 1251 to abolish the Bishopric of Semigalia, and divided its territories between the Bishopric of Riga and the Order of Livonia. In 1265 a stone castle was built at Jelgava, on the Lilupe, and became the main military base for Crusader attacks against the Semigalians. In 1271 the capital hill fort of Tervete was conquered, but Semigalians under the duke named Isis rebelled in 1279, and the Lithuanians under Traianish defeated Livonian Order forces in the Battle of Aizkraukel. Duke named Isa warriors unsuccessfully attacked Riga in 1280, in response to which around 14,000 Crusaders besieged Turaida Castle in 1281. To conquer the remaining Semigalian hillforts, the Order's Master Vilikan of Indorp built a castle called Heiligenberg right next to the Tervete castle in 1287. The same year the Semigalians made another attempt to conquer Riga, but again failed to take it. On their return home Livonian knights attacked them, but were defeated at the Battle of Garoza, in which the Order's Master Vilikan and at least 35 knights lost their lives. The new master of the order, Kuno of Hesse-Einstein, organized the last campaigns against the Semigalians in 1289 and 1290. The hillforts of Dobel, Rakta and Sidarb were conquered, and most of the Semigalian warriors joined the Samogitian and Lithuanian forces. Prussia and Lithuania. Campaigns of Conrad of Masovia. Conrad I, the Polish Duke of Masovia, unsuccessfully attempted to conquer pagan Prussia in Crusades in 1219 and 1222. Taking the advice of the first Bishop of Prussia, Christian of Oliva, Conrad founded the Crusading Order of Dobrin in 1220. However, this order was largely ineffective, and Conrad's campaigns against the Old Prussians were answered by incursions into the already captured territory of Kulmerland, subjected to constant Prussian counter-raids. Conrad wanted to stabilize the north of the Duchy of Masovia in this fight over border area of Chelmna land. Masovia had only been conquered in the 10th century, and native Prussians, Jotvingians, and Lithuanians were still living in the territory, where no settled borders existed. His military weakness led Conrad to invite the Teutonic Knights to Prussia. Teutonic Order. The Northern Crusades provided a rationale for the growth and expansion of the Teutonic Order of German Crusading Knights, which had been founded in Palestine at the end of the 12th century. Due to Muslim successes in the Holy Land, the order sought new missions in Europe. Duke Conrad I of Masovia in west-central Poland appealed to the knights to defend his borders and subdue the pagan Baltic Prussians in 1226. After the subjugation of the Prussians, the Teutonic Knights fought against the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. When the Livonian Knights were crushed by Samogitians in the Battle of Seoul in 1236, coinciding with a series of revolts in Estonia, the Livonian Order was inherited by the Teutonic Order, allowing the Teutonic Knights to exercise political control over large territories in the Baltic region. Mindaugas, the king of Lithuania, was baptized together with his wife after his coronation in 1253, hoping that this would help stop the Crusaders' attacks, which it did not. The Teutonic Knights failed to subdue pagan Lithuania, which officially converted to Christianity in 1386 on the marriage of Grand Duke Jogaila to the 11-year-old Queen Jadwiga of Poland. However, even after the country was officially converted, the Crusades continued up until the Battle of Grunwald in 1410. When the Lithuanians and Poles, helped by the Tatars, Moldovans and the Czechs, defeated the Teutonic Knights. The Teutonic Order's attempts to conquer Orthodox Russia, an enterprise endorsed by Pope Gregory IX, can also be considered as a part of the Northern Crusades. One of the major blows for the idea of the conquest of Russia was the Battle of the Ice in 1242. With or without the Pope's blessing, Sweden also undertook several crusades against Orthodox Novgorod.